who will powers. I now invite the Honorable Rudranath Indar Singh to address you. Indar Singh.
Thank you very much, my friend and colleague, Senator Wade Mark, and I join him in welcoming our political leader, the Honorable Kamla Prasad Bisesa, and members of our great party and Trinidad and Tobago in another of our Sunday morning press conferences emanating out of the office of the Leader of the Opposition. And like all things being equal, my dear brothers and sisters, citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, we in the United National Congress recently launched our civic outreach and engagement of stakeholders, which clearly sends a signal that we will embark on the engagement of all stakeholders throughout the length and breadth of Trinidad and Tobago. We are prepared as the official opposition to go into every nook and cranny of Trinidad and Tobago to sensitize all stakeholders, to sensitize the people of Trinidad and Tobago as it relates to the PNM's declaration under the Prime Ministership of Dr. Keith Christopher Rowley and the PNM of war on the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago and on the democracy of our great country. The Opposition United National Congress, since its inception, has been rooted in grassroots politics that has always seen the leadership and membership of our party rooted in the trenches, as I said, since our formation. And we in the opposition has had a proud history of meeting with stakeholders and fostering dialogue on issues affecting the people of our nation. And the opposition will continue to do our duty to hold the government to account. We will continue to defend the Constitution of Trinidad and Tobago and all of the people, and certainly we want to tell Trinidad and Tobago that we will not flinch in fulfilling this sense of duty and responsibility under the Constitution of Trinidad and Tobago. As a result, we have committed to meeting with as many civic stakeholders now on an ongoing basis, and our party has formed a committee through the vision of our honorable political leader and leader of the opposition, Kamla Prasad Bisesa, and the party to initiate this process, to inspire opportunities for dialogue. This process must be seen in the context of the October Revolution, which was launched by our honorable political leader, Kamla Prasad Bisesa, and which will now continue as the People's Revolution as we seek to rebuild and restore the democracy of Trinidad and Tobago. And this morning, my brothers and sisters, citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, we send a very clear message to the country that the United National Congress will not rest until we rebuild and restore the democracy of Trinidad and Tobago. And in this regard, we will hear from the business community, we will hear from the labor community, we will hear from the religious bodies and the wider civil society and non-governmental organizations and all of Trinidad and Tobago. We have noticed that there continues to be shared and common concerns as it relates to the problems which are affecting the people of Trinidad and Tobago, such as the escalating crime rate, the state of our economy. And the state of our economy has many dimensions in terms of the declining GDP, the looting of the Heritage and Stabilization Fund, the foreign reserves crisis, the lack of foreign direct investment, the mismanagement of the COVID-19 pandemic, the mass vaccination chaos, the collapse and death of democracy and independent institutions in Trinidad and Tobago. And I will elaborate on this particular issue as it relates to the collapse and the death of democracy and independent institutions later on in my discourse this morning. And there is also the level of unemployment, the lack of job opportunities, escalating food prices, poor and collapsed infrastructure across the country, the impact of climate change, flooding and drainage, the chaos and confusion within our education system, and the list continues to grow under Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley and his government, which has emerged to be, the most incompetent Prime Minister, the most dangerous Prime Minister as it relates to the democracy of Trinidad and Tobago and the war that they have declared on the people of this country. Because you see, my brothers and sisters, it is important to remind Trinidad and Tobago about the importance of our Constitution and the importance as it relates to Section 4 and 5 of the Constitution of this country, as it relates to the right of the individual to life, liberty, and security, and the right of the individual to equality before the law, and the protection of the law, and other areas which focuses on the freedom of thought and expression, the freedom of association and assembly, and the freedom of the press, and also the areas that are outlined on Section 5 of the Constitution of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, my dear brothers and sisters. And we have made it clear that the People's Revolution, the October Revolution, which was launched, had the focus to ensure that the collapse of democracy, which has emerged under Dr. Keith Rowley and the PNM, must not be allowed to entrench itself as part of the normal operations of life in Trinidad and Tobago. And in this regard, we must never forget that Sections 122 of the Constitution of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago focuses on the fact that there shall be a Police Service Commission for Trinidad and Tobago, which shall consist of a chairman and four other members. And also Section 122, subsection 2 and 3, states that the members of the Police Service Commission shall be appointed by the President in accordance with this section, and subsection 3 states that the President shall, after consultation, shall is the operative word, after consultation with the Prime Minister and Leader of the Opposition, nominate persons in the areas qualified in the disciplines of law and finance and sociology or management to be appointed as members of the Police Service Commission. And Section 123 spells out clearly about the powers of the Police Service Commission and the role of the Commissioner of Police and the Deputy Commissioner of Police and so on. And we could go on and on as it relates to this particular areas in the Constitution. But it is important to realize and to remind the population of Trinidad and Tobago that Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley has crossed a dangerous line in his illegal effort to get rid of the former Commissioner of Police. And as the Prime Minister, he does not appear, or he has sent a very clear signal that he does not care about the rule of law or the Constitution, and he has carried Trinidad and Tobago to a very dangerous point. This crisis, this constitutional crisis, and the collapse of democracy and the breach of the Constitution of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago has kept Gary Griffith from remaining as the Commissioner of Police today. And the question has to be asked, next time it could be about you, any of you not getting the promotion that you deserve in your job or getting fired for political reasons. And the next time the government could be focusing on taking away your property, you being arrested for posting something on social media that a minister of government did not take a liking to, and the government imposing hardship after hardship on you illegally and with no recourse in order to give to their friends, family, and financiers. And we will not let the PNM silence us. We will not let them get away with creating a dictatorship in Trinidad and Tobago, and where the Prime Minister can do what he wants to choose a Commissioner of Police, regardless of the law, where a President and Police Service Commission can withdraw a list without following proper procedure because the Prime Minister did not like what was on that list. Once they reach that point, there is nothing that they will stop at. Our independent institutions risk being reduced to nothing more than facades they have already compromised. And in this regard, my brothers and sisters, the people of Trinidad and Tobago, it is important to remind the country that there is the death of democracy, and this is where the United National Congress has embarked on this people's revolution to engage stakeholders and to meet with all stakeholders in Trinidad and Tobago from the point of sensitization and working with all stakeholders, because it has said that democracy dies in darkness, and to the disgrace of our great country, both houses of parliament, the House of Representatives and the Senate, voted to keep you in the dark over the questions relating to the interference of our independent institutions. And we must never forget, and the United National Congress will not rest. We will not put this matter to rest. We will not allow it to die, because it is our responsibility to keep it in the public domain and to ask the question, why did the government and the independent senators voted to keep you in the dark? Why did the president did not submit the Police Service Commission's merit list to the parliament as was required by law and required by the Constitution of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago? Why, for the first time in our history, we do not have a police commissioner or an acting police commissioner in place, nor do we have an independent police service commission, the mechanism under the Constitution of the country to appoint a police commissioner, my brothers and sisters. And whether all this interference occurred, and however, it is important on this particular issue that they vote about much more than this. It was about a vote that was ensuring that the principles of our Constitution remained intact. If we as a country remain and allow Dr. Rowley as Prime Minister get away with this, if we allow him to cross this line and don't restrain him and the PNM to the Constitution of Trinidad and Tobago, he will interfere in everything and with everyone without any limits or restraint. And we have a sacred principle that we wish to defend. That is the idea that governments must serve the people and not the other way around. The Constitution has these principles enshrined within it, and Prime Minister Dr. Rowley and the PNM must not ignore those aspects of the Constitution that do not serve them. No one, I want to reiterate, no one is above the law, not the opposition leader, not the Prime Minister, and not Her Excellency, the President. No one in Trinidad and Tobago is above the law. And as it relates to this particular crisis, the questions that still needs to be answered. Why did the President first say that she received a merit list from the Police Service Commission, but now resorted to saying that the list was submitted and then withdrawn? Who withdrew this list and why? Was the list withdrawn on instruction from the Prime Minister, Dr. Keith Rowley? Why did the entire Police Service Commission resign in chaos? Why was Dr. Rowley as Prime Minister writing to the Police Service Commission last year, trying to influence the reselection of Gary Griffith as the Commissioner of Police? Is this the reason that Dr. Rowley as Prime Minister lost confidence in Gary Griffith? Because Gary Griffith was going to lock up the daughter or stepdaughter of a government minister and was going after the DSS and a certain MP from that area? These are the questions that remain unanswered, and we were hoping that in the interest of the democracy of Trinidad and Tobago and the debate in the Parliament based on the motion that was filed by the Leader of the Opposition under Section 36 of the Constitution of the Republic of this country, that the answers could have been provided. The chaos, the confusion, the secrecy, the cover-up, the conspiracy could have been dealt with, that would have been able to provide the answers not only to the opposition but to the people of Trinidad and Tobago in keeping with the constitutional responsibilities. And in this regard, my brothers and sisters of Trinidad and Tobago, you have to understand that in recent times, it is very clear that the government has also pursued an agenda of watering down 3/5 legislation in this country that provides checks and balances for independent institutions. The government has indicated that they want to establish a 3/5 majority, a Trinidad and Tobago Revenue Authority, And that establishment of this Revenue Authority was premised on the basis of a legislation or a bill that is before the Parliament of this country at this point in time, where it was to be created with the check and balance of a 3/5 majority. And all the stakeholders that were consulted on this piece of legislation before it came to the Parliament of the country was not told that the 3/5 majority checks and balance would have been pulled, and it came to the Parliament like a thief in the night, like other pieces of legislation that they watered down to ensure that it was passed with a simple majority so that the rights of citizens, the rights of organization could have been preserved in terms of the oath of upholding the Constitution of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. And that is why we feel that the People's Revolution is the avenue to engage stakeholders as it relates to doing something about this battle against the dictatorship of Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley. Because I want to tell Trinidad and Tobago that the world is aware of what is happening under the government of Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley and his dictatorship tendencies and the programs and policies which are going against the will of the people and the Constitution of this country. And it is our duty-bound responsibility to speak up and speak out, to speak up and speak out and engage the citizens through this process of sensitization. Because if we do not engage in this process of sensitization, we would be failing under the leadership of Kamla Persad-Bissessar in our duty and responsibility under the Constitution of Trinidad and Tobago, my brothers and sisters. So, our revolution is one of non-violence. It is not one of ill will or any malice to destabilize our Trinidad and Tobago. But we will continue to focus on mutual discussions about the erosion of our democracy in our country, to pursue a course of action in defense of our nation's constitution, democracy, the rule of law, the principle of the separation of powers, and the promotion of effective and meaningful participation and power in the democratic decision-making process of our nation. And as I pointed out, we will continue to ensure that the behavior, the dictatorial behavior of the Prime Minister, members of Cabinet, and the PNM government of Trinidad and Tobago is brought to the fore, because we will ensure that the PNM's circumvention of the Constitution by masquerading 3/5 majority legislation as simple majority ones is extremely disturbing. We will ensure that the debate, which was purposely stifled by office holders in the House of Representatives on the recent opposition motion to hold Her Excellency the President to account for the collapse of the Police Service Commission, we will ensure that the shadowy circumstances which led to the collapse of the Police Service Commission and the fact that Trinidad and Tobago is now without a police commissioner poses a real threat to the democracy and security of Trinidad and Tobago, and we will ensure that democracy prevails in this country under the leadership of Kamla Persad-Bissessar and the United National Congress as we take the People's Revolution to every nook and cranny of Trinidad and Tobago. Having said this, my dear brothers and sisters, people of Trinidad and Tobago, stay tuned for continued programs and events under this broad theme of the People's Revolution in accounting to the people of Trinidad and Tobago and ensuring that the Constitution and democracy is not watered down in our daily lives. And without further ado, I now invite my friend and colleague, Senator Wade Mark, who will address you on this broad and overarching theme of the death of democracy, the erosion of independent institutions in our country, and the fact that Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley and the People's National Movement have declared war on the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Senator Wade Mark.
Thank you. Thank you, my colleague, Honorable Rudranath Indarsi. Brothers and sisters, my colleague has given you a panoramic view and literal insight into all the events that have occurred over the last few weeks, culminating in the collapse of the Police Service Commission, the removal through a court order of the sitting acting Commissioner of Police, and today as we speak, for the first time since attaining independence on August 31st, 1962, Trinidad and Tobago is without a police commissioner. We are without, as a nation, an acting police commissioner. And of course, the collapse of the Police Service Commission. All of these things have taken place against very questionable and suspicious circumstances and conditions. The president, who is not above the law, is still to account, is still to be transparent and open with the population as to why, instead of forwarding that merit list to the parliament, she allowed someone else to retrieve it and therefore breached and violated her oath of office under the Constitution, where she sworn on oath to uphold the Constitution and the law. Madam President, you have to come clean and you have to come better than how you have come thus far. You have to inform the nation why you, as the president, refused to forward that listing to the parliament for debate in accordance with our constitution. The office of the president is mandated, I want to repeat, mandated to forward that merit list. There's no discretion surrounding that matter. So the president has breached, violated our constitution. And the president has to account, must account to the nation. It did not only happen once, it happened twice. Both with the acting list to be sent to the parliament that maybe she placed in a drawer. So these are two very important issues, and we need to know, Excellency, who was that public official who inserted himself in your office on either August 11th or August 12th. We need answers to these burning questions. And we will not rest. We shall not rest until the President of our Republic clears the air on this matter. I want to say further that with the collapse of the Police Service Commission, the President has proceeded to submit new nominees. As our leader has said, if the tree is poisoned, the fruit emanating from that tree is also poisoned. And therefore the office is tainted, and whoever the President is appointing, those people are going to be infected. They are going to be contaminated. And may I say from the outset, the nominees, because I looked at the order paper that is scheduled for debate, matters on that order paper, that is, this Wednesday. And we observed the President has submitted the names of 5 nominees. Let me say from the outset, we in the United National Congress, main objective and focus is and will always be the public interest. We are here to protect the public interests. And yes, some of these persons that have been nominated may have and may possess and may be very distinguished sons and daughters of the soil. We have no personal grievances with anyone who have been nominated. What our concern is essentially is transparency, accountability, good governance, and we want to ensure that the public interest is protected, defended, and safeguarded. That is what we are concerned about. So we want to ask some questions this morning arising out of the list of nominees that are before us. And we would like the President, who ought to have done proper due diligence on those nominees or some of those nominees that would have been put forward and that are scheduled to be debated in the House of Representatives on Wednesday of this week. We would like the President to clear the air, and even some of the persons who are engaged, to clear the air on some of the concerns that we have on these submissions that have been made thus far. As I said, we have no difficulty. We cast no aspersions. These are distinguished sons and daughters of the soil, and we have no problems, no personal grievances with any of them. Our concern is the protection of the public interest. So, for example, when we looked at the list of nominees, there are some persons that we would like the President, Her Excellency, to provide us with some further clarification on their background and their status. For the first individual, which we would like to get some clarification on, because we are seeing potential areas of conflict. The Police Service Commission is a constitutionally entrenched institution. It is autonomous. It carries out quasi-judicial functions. It is responsible for selecting, recruiting, and recommending the offices of police commissioner and deputy police commissioners. whoever is appointed as police commissioner has under his control close to 8,000 men and women under arms. That is the coercive arm of the state. And we have to be very careful that there is no contamination, no subversion, no undermining, no erosion and interference in that selection process. So the persons who are being appointed have to be like Caesar's wife. They have to be beyond reproach. So serious is this matter. So the first person who we would like to have some clarification on is a gentleman who is associated with a company, and I will give you the name of the company so that you will have an understanding of why we have raised these questions. Now, colleagues and friends, we have the name of an individual by the name of Ian Kevin Ramdani. He works for a company called Caribbean Institute for Security and Public Safety. Its registered address is 81 to 82 Montrose Main Road, Chaguanas. Mr. Ramdani is a distinguished son of the soil. We have no personal grievance with him, and we cast no aspersions on his character. However, due diligence tells us that Mr. Ramdani is an employee of the Caribbean Institute for Security and Public Safety. Who are the owners of this institute? The last time I checked, on August the 11th, 2021, in the Registrar General's Department, I discovered that Amalgamated Security are the owners of this institute. Amalgamated provides security for this nation in several areas. In fact, they are responsible for transporting prisoners in this country for the last 10 to 15 years. They are also responsible for applying to the police commissioner to obtain licenses to import guns into this country for them to carry out their functions. So this particular company, that is Caribbean Security and Public Safety Company Limited, the main shareholders and directors are one John Aboud and Michael Aboud. We have nothing against Mr. Aboud. He's into business. But because the company is in conflict with this particular responsibility through this employee that has now been nominated by Her Excellency to sit on a police service commission to select, recruit, recommend a police commissioner and a deputy police commissioner or deputy police commissioners, that constitute a potential conflict of interest. It is not what is done, it is what is seen to be done. Justice must not only be done, but it must be seen to be done. And therefore it's important that whoever is being nominated by the president must be beyond reproach. There is something called a bias and apparent bias. Apparent bias has to do with how the ordinary man traveling in a maxi taxi will interpret this particular development. So we have nothing against Mr. Ivan Kevin Ramdani. We are saying that he's working for a company which is owned by Amalgamated Security that is in conflict with the role that is being given to this particular employee of this particular company called Caribbean Institute for Security and Public Safety. That, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, constitutes a potential conflict of interest. There is the possibility of apparent bias in this matter. I am not too sure if this company is a financier of the PNM. I'm not too sure. They must come and tell us if they financed the PNM in the last general elections. So we are saying in this instance that there's need for the government, Her Excellency rather, to reconsider this nomination. And we are calling on Mr. Ivan Kevin Ramdani to also reconsider your nomination for this particular position, because you are going to be conflicted. You are going to have a potential conflict of interest. I would have imagined that proper due diligence would have been done by the office of the president. We have done our due diligence and we are bringing it to the attention of the population, the office of the president, and Mr. Ivan Kevin Ramdani. So we ask the president to consider withdrawing this nomination and finding a new one. And we call on Mr. Ivan Kevin Ramdani, who I have no grievance with personally, because of the potential conflict of interest, to withdraw his nomination from this particular list that has been sent to the Parliament. That's the first person that we would like Her Excellency to pay attention to. The other person that we would like Her Excellency to pay some attention to is there's an individual who we would like to clear the air on a couple of things. We have one Mrs. Maxine Atong, again a distinguished daughter of the soil. We cast no aspersions on her ability or her capacity. We have questions that we like to ask. First of all, I understand that this lady is the president of HERMAT. I think that's the Human Resource Association or body of Trinidad and Tobago. She was the president up to 2018 or 19. She must let us know if she's still president of this body. And we also would like her to clear the air on whether she has been using that office to solicit contracts, not only for HERMAT, but for her own firm that is engaged in the provision of professional managerial leadership services. So we would like this lady, Mrs. Maxine Atong, to tell us whether First of all, does the firm that this lady represents have contracts with the Trinidad and Tobago government? Does this firm that is under the control of this nominee receive any contracts from the Ministry of Public Administration or any state enterprise over the last 5 years to 6 years? We have a picture here with the lady posing with the former Minister of Labour, Jennifer Batiste, in 2018, where Hermat, of whom this lady is the president, she is the president of Hermat, and we would like to know whether, as the story goes, her responsibility in 2018 was to solicit contracts and work from the Ministry of Labour for Hermat and, by extension, her own private company. We would like to know this. This is a very serious matter. So Maxine Atong needs to come clean with Trinidad and Tobago. And by the way, is Mrs. Maxine Atong a card-carrying member of the People's National Movement? Is she a member of the ruling party? Is she associated directly or indirectly with the ruling party? These are questions that are burning out, that are burning for answers. People need answers to this question. People need answers. So we are not casting aspersions. We are not attacking this lady because she might be a very distinguished and competent individual. But what we are concerned about is the public interest. We do not want what happened to the Police Service Commission to reoccur, where a public official could exercise influence over individuals to the point where those individuals can become puppets of this particular regime. So we ask for clarification from this distinguished daughter of the soil. You are now moving to become a nominee to sit on a very critical institution under our constitution. You have to be transparent. You have to be open. You have to be accountable. You have to bare your bosom and tell this nation your background. How many contracts, if any, you have with the government of Trinidad and Tobago? How many contracts you have with ministries, particularly public administration? Whether you played any role or part in the recent recruitment and selection of the police commissioner and deputy police commissioner through your firm. These are questions that we want clarification on. And only you can provide those answers to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. So this is an area that we are concerned about, Madam Excellency, and whether, as part of the Bishop's Tea Party, whether this is a former Bishop Ansi High School student. These are issues that we are trying to clarify, because we want to ensure transparency, accountability, openness, and proper governance. We cannot afford to allow a police service commission to be handpicked and to be P&M in orientation. And then you have a P&M police commissioner being appointed to head 8,000 men and women who are armed to the teeth. We don't want no mongoose gang in our country. We don't want no Tonton Makoots in our land. So that is the person we would want Her Excellency to provide some clarity. And if it turns out that this particular lady, who I have no disrespect for, I cast no aspersions, I ask questions as the alternative government to ensure that there's transparency, there's accountability, there's openness, there's good governance, to come clean and lay everything bare so we, the people, can know whether these issues that have been brought to our attention false, true, or not true. Tell us, because we have information and we are investigating further. So we ask questions at this time, and we would like clarification on those questions that we have asked. Now, there's another individual who, again, I cast no aspersions on. I have the greatest respect for that individual. In fact, I've known that individual for some time in the past. Hold no brief, cast no aspersion, respect the individual. This is not about the individual. This is about the interests of the public of Trinidad and Tobago. This is about law and justice and the constitution of our country. We know we have a gangster leading a government who will do anything in order to rape and destroy our democracy, our rule of law, our separation of powers, and our freedoms and liberties. We know him. He has done it, and he's doing it. The third person I would like, Madam Excellency, to get some clarification on, based on due diligence, is one Maxine King. We want some clarification on Maxine King. I have a document dated November the 23rd, 2017. We understand that this young lady works for a company by the name of First Line Securities Limited. We understand it's a wealth management company, and she's an employee there. What piqued our interest, however, was when we looked at the company's registry. We looked at the Registrar General's office, and we found a document dated November the 23rd, 2017. And we saw, and I read for you, mortgage dated November the 2nd, 2017, and made an amount Inez Investments Limited, the issuer. The issuer is the borrower. Bacolet Estates Limited, the mortgagor. And something called First Line Securities Limited. It goes on to say, not in its individual capacity, but as collateral agent for note holders, as respectfully defined in section 1.1 of Loan Note Instrument dated the 29th of August 2017. And the aggregate principal amount is $12.5 million. Now, we ask some simple questions. This collateral agent is managing, controlling, issuing, probably to potential mortgagors, this $12.5 million to purchase maybe homes or residences. If this is so, who are the note holders of this $12.5 million that has been borrowed by Inez Investments Limited? And I understand Inez Investments Limited is owned by the Warner family, a very prominent family in Tobago, well known. They're involved in business, construction, and a number of activities. In fact, they recently bought Presticon for some $30 million. This company is owned by the Warner family. So we want to know, what is the link, Madam Excellency, between First Line Securities Limited, that is collateral agent for Inez Investments Limited, owned by the Warner families, Bacolet Estates, which is owned by the Chinleys family, and hundreds of houses being constructed on that Bacolet Estate as we speak, and First Line Securities Limited, of which the nominee is an employee. Now, we need answers to these questions, because I have information that this company called Inez Investments Limited, which is owned by the Warner family, is closely associated with the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago. Can the Prime Minister deny or confirm whether he and one Alan Warner are business partners? We want clarification from the Prime Minister. I have evidence to show that back in 2008, we had a company by the name of Alma River Ventures Limited being incorporated, and the incorporator was a geologist by the name of Keith Christopher Rowley. And the two directors on that Alma River Ventures Limited were Alan Warner and Keith Christopher Rowley. So we understand that there appears to be a close relationship between these two gentlemen, and I call on the Prime Minister to indicate to this nation whether your business partner is Alan Warner, and whether you incorporated a company which has changed its name from Alma River Ventures Limited to Alma Farm. The reason why I raise these matters, ladies and gentlemen, is because the Bacolet Estate, which is owned by the Chinleys, there are hundreds of houses being constructed on sections or parts of the Bacolet Estates, or estate at the time, by this company owned by Warner. I think it's Inez Investments Limited. Mr. Warner could clear the air as to his involvement in this particular construction of hundreds of homes on the Bacolet Estate. And what is the relationship between this project and that of the Prime Minister? Let us get some clarification. Because First Line Securities Limited is associated in this document that I've just read to you. They are associated with this company called Inez Investments Limited, owned by the Warner family, and Bacolet Estates Limited. And the collateral agent is First Line Securities Limited. They didn't raise the money. They have nothing to do with the money. All they are doing is ensuring that the people who borrow the money, which is Inez, pay back the money. That is what they are there to ensure. So we need clarification on this matter. And I also have pictures which I can show to the press about a massive project that is being constructed in a place called Raleigh, I think it's Raleigh, Quaco Boulevard. It's a massive project that is taking place. I understand the land is registered in the name of Sharon Rowley Clark. I think the cadastral sheet would show that. That, you know, the former land date scandal, that is what is now emerging. A massive construction. So what we want to find out from Her Excellency, as I said, I cast no aspersions on this lady called Maxine King. I've known her for several years. I am not concerned about her. She's a decent lady. She might be a lady with distinguished lady. What I'm concerned about and what we are concerned about is the potential conflict of interest. Who is pulling the strings in this matter? And we call on Her Excellency to revisit that particular nominee and if possible withdraw it. Because there's a potential conflict of interest between this particular nominee, the firm that she works for, and this company called Inez Investments and Bacolet Estate. There can be potential conflicts of interest and potential bias. So I think it's important that we get clarification on these matters. Now I have many more pieces to reveal, but I think that I have said enough on this matter. One final thing I'll say on the Alma River Ventures Limited. Dr. Rowley, who incorporated that company applied to the EMA to establish that farm for pigs, cattle, and poultry back in 2009. By January of 2010, it was rejected. Come back in the year 2015, applied in December of 2015, and within 3 weeks, the EMA approved that particular CEC. That is what I know. So maybe Dr. Rowley cleared the air on that matter as well. So ladies and gentlemen, that is the second area I want to touch on briefly. And I also want to deal briefly with the debt announcement made by the Prime Minister of Train 1 last evening when he arrived from Glasgow, Scotland. The Prime Minister was aware since December of 2019 or 2020 through a letter sent to him by BPTT that Train 1 could not be supplied with gas either from BPTT or by Shell. But the Prime Minister, as head of the cabinet, along with the Minister of Energy, proceeded on the advice of Mark Luqman, president of the NGC, and the chairman, Conrad Enel, to pump over $650 million or thereabouts into this project, saying they were upgrading this project, Train 1, knowing fully well there was no gas. No gas! He had to go to England to talk to Shell, to come back to Trinidad and Tobago, to tell Trinidad and Tobago that the doctor has put on his clothes, his jacket, to pronounce the death of Train 1. So Dr. Rowley, Prime Minister, who is going to be liable for the $650 million or approximately that amount? Who is culpable? Who is liable for this amount of monies that have gone down the drain? You are calling on people to pay property tax at a bitter and difficult period in our nation's history. And your government has wasted some $650 million. Well, Mr. Prime Minister, you are criminally liable and responsible, and you must be held accountable for that $650 million or thereabouts that have gone down the drain. And I think this is misbehavior in public office. I think that you, the Prime Minister, and your entire cabinet must not only take responsibility for this fiasco, but we call on you to get rid of Mark Luqman and that entire board, along with yourself and your cabinet. Because all of you are all responsible for this debacle that has visited our country, and on that $650 million. So don't come and tell us, and the government lied to the people, talking about secrecy, complexity, difficulties, technicalities, why they couldn't share the information with the people of this country. All lies, knowing fully well that the Train 1 was being mudballed. Train 1 was not going anywhere. Train 1 was off the track. Train 1 was derailed. You knew that since December of last year. Yet still you pumped into that wreckage some $650 million in this go-over season. And you come in to ask us for pardon? And you want to commit an act of contrition in this matter? No, Mr. Prime Minister. You are accountable, you are liable, you are culpable, and you must take full responsibility and tender your resignation. And this thing about indemnity, don't take God out of your thoughts and grant any indemnity to Mark Luqman and Enel and that board of NGC, along with NGC LNG. No, this is criminal conduct, misbehavior in public office, and you must take full responsibility for that. And as I close, as I come to the end, state of emergency being lifted, I want to remind this country, do not trust the Prime Minister. He has forked tongue. He speaks on both sides of his mouth. Remember when he told us Petrotrin is not closing down? And if you're closing your fridge and you didn't hear me, Petrotrin is not closing down? Well, he destroyed Petrotrin. So the state of emergency comes to an end on the 29th or the 30th of this month. And he's now saying that he's going to not seek to have an extension. But you know, he could come back a week later and declare a second state of emergency. He can do that. So you can't trust this Prime Minister? So we await to see if his words has any meaning, or whether you're just, again, mama guy in the population to set us up. And I want to condemn the action taken by the authorities by not granting that permit to the scrap iron dealers of Trinidad and Tobago for their drive about from somewhere Brian Lara Stadium to the Queen's Park Savannah, trampling on the liberties and freedoms of the people. So we extend our solidarity with the Trinidad and Tobago Scrap Iron and Dealers Association of TNT. And the last thing I'd like to say, this motion that has been filed in the Parliament by an independent senator, it is silly, it is frivolous, it is vexatious. It is designed to massively distract the country from what is confronting it today, a breach and violation of our Constitution by the President of this Republic, and an undermining of the rule of law, the separation of powers, and the gradual obliteration of our freedoms, liberties, and rights. Oh, how we miss distinguished senators like Martin Daly, Kenneth Ramchan, Ramesh Diusoran, Diana Mahabir Wyatt, former deceased, may her soul rest in peace, Dana Sitahal, Kenny Julian, deceased, may his soul rest in peace, Eastlyn Mackenzie, John Spence, deceased, may his soul rest in peace, and other distinguished senators who occupied the hallowed halls of the Senate in years gone by. How Trinidad and Tobago miss these erudite and outstanding citizens of our republic. I want to close by advising these so-called individuals who believe that they have the power to tell us how to speak and when to speak. I want to remind them, those who live in glass houses should never throw stones. I want to remind those senators who have decided to throw stones at the UNC and the opposition senators. You have now entered the political Gael. You will take what is coming. We are not lying down. We will do what we have to do to defend our Constitution, our democracy, our liberty, our freedom, the rule of law, and the principle of the separation of powers. So, brothers and sisters, at this point in time, I'd like to thank members of the media for following this press conference this morning. And I wish to invite anyone at this time who have questions for the Honorable Rudranath Indar Singh or myself to do so at this time. So the conference is now open to anyone who would like to raise questions to either Rudranath or myself.
Senator Mark, we have a question for Mr. Indar Singh from ACP News. MP Indar Singh, this is from Priya Bihari.
Yeah.
He wants to know if the UNC will be supporting the 5 poll side nominees on Wednesday in the lower house.
Well, as he would have heard, and members of the media would have heard from my colleague this morning, Senator Mark, who has raised a number of issues as it relates to nominees who have been proposed we have no specific ill will or malice against individuals who have opted to themselves for national service, but we have very important questions for answers in the interest of transparency, good governance, and accountability as it relates to what he has raised here this morning, especially along the lines of the conflict of interest. And as a result, we will make our position open with the passage of time, and we continue to make the point that prior to these nominees too, answers as it relates to the previous incarnation of the Police Service Commission. Why did the then chairperson? Why did the commissioners resign? Where is the merit list? Who is the high official who allegedly went to the Excellency and maneuvered or interfered with the merit list? Why did it not come to the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago for debate? So long as these questions remain unanswered, the process will be viewed from where we sit to be very tainted and questionable. And as I said, with the fullness of time, the opposition will make its position very clear. So we were on this side, from the point of view of myself and Senator Wade Mapp, we want to bring this morning's weekly press conference to an end and continue to alert Trinidad and Tobago that the United National Congress, through the People's Revolution, will not rest until the rule of law, the democracy of this country is restored and rebuilt, and the principles of the separation of powers and adhering to the Constitution of Trinidad and Tobago is upheld by the government of Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley. We will not rest in ensuring that democracy prevails in Trinidad and Tobago under the leadership of Kamla Persad-Bissessar and the United National Congress.
Before my colleague closes, I want to just share this picture with the citizens of this country and ask the Honorable Prime Minister whether he is familiar with the structure that is being put up at, I think, Raleigh, I always make that mistake. Raleigh Quaco Boulevard, just off Mason Road and Lekoto. This is the massive structure that is being built, multi-million dollar. Whether the Prime Minister is aware of the structure, whether he owns it, a relative owns it, tell the country where you got the money to build this. We want accountability. Is this your property, Mr. Prime Minister? Thank you.